All right, guys, in this video, we're going to be having a little bit of a discussion regarding something that I became aware of early today, and I find the conversation surrounding it to be pretty ridiculous, honestly. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about Digital Foundry's recent findings when it comes to Control Ultimate Edition on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, where apparently they discovered that when you are in photo mode with this title, the frame rate unlocks. And so they decided to kind of use it as a benchmark and compare the two when running in fidelity mode with the ray tracing enabled. And they kind of wanted to see, who's going to have the higher frame rate. And the Xbox Series X, when doing these direct comparisons in photo mode, had a pretty significant advantage over the PS5, where the frame rate was higher more often than not. There was one particular area where they kept stressing it was like the busiest area, where they were basically matched at I think around 32 or 33 frames per second. But what's happening now is a lot of people, specifically Xbox fans, are running with this and using this as some kind of way to flex on PS5 owners. And I can kind of understand why they're doing this, because we cannot forget the position that the Xbox Series X has been in and is currently in. We cannot forget how much Microsoft marketed this console as just a powerful 12 T-flop beast monster of a console. We were told time and time again to expect some kind of big difference. And what's interesting about this is this seems to be the first time we are seeing a substantial difference, and it's happening in photo mode. Now, the reason why I think this is ridiculous is because, well, first of all, just this idea, just this notion that we're going to use photo mode as a way to compare the capabilities of both of these consoles, that notion in it of itself is ridiculous. But it's especially ridiculous when you realize that, and I'm not too familiar with this, but I was looking into it, and apparently when photo mode is enabled, it greatly reduces CPU load, and essentially only one component of the console is being compared here when in photo mode. And that is not gameplay, not the most important part, when everything's just completely still. And it's really just kind of comparing the graphical capability from a GPU level. That's essentially what we're seeing here with this comparison. And that's why I don't think it's something people should be running with. I think it's interesting, also not surprising. When you think about the biggest difference between the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, it's pretty much that GPU and SSD. Now, Microsoft opted for the bigger, more powerful GPU with more compute units, and we are directly seeing that in play here in photo mode. Again, I have to emphasize, in photo mode, because it's not as simple as, well, let's just unlock the frame rate, and the Xbox Series X is going to suddenly run at 4K, 60 frames per second, no problem, with ray tracing enabled in the fidelity mode. I highly doubt that's what's going to happen. It's just not that simple. It never is. You're failing to take into account that when it comes to a game running, and we've talked about this before, on a console, it's not just the GPU that matters. It's just not one single component. It's every single component and how they work together. And that makes a very big difference in how a game is going to perform and how it's going to look and how it's going to play. So I just find it really strange that we're seeing this scenario kind of unfold. And it's not surprising to me, because I understand that from an Xbox fan's perspective who bought the Xbox Series X, you bought this console really believing that it was going to be the superior console, that you were going to get the superior multi-plat games. And the way the whole situation has unfolded, I can understand why you would want to look at this and be like, ha, see, we told you. If Remedy just decided to unlock the frame rate, the Xbox Series X would smoke the PS5 in fidelity mode and run at a 4K, nearly locked 60 FPS. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories going around now claiming that, oh, well, Sony convinced Remedy not to do that and to create parity. And the truth is, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see an Xbox Series X advantage if that's something that Remedy decided to do. If they did decide to unlock the frame rate in the fidelity mode, it wouldn't surprise me if the Series X did offer an advantage, but I just I have a hard time believing this idea that, oh, Sony had to convince Remedy to not do that. I mean, come on. Like, are we really going to go down that road? I mean, we're failing to take into account here all of the other titles, multi-platform titles that have been compared on these consoles, and we haven't seen anything like this. There have been times where the Series X had some slight advantages, and there have been times where the PS5 has some slight advantages. You also have to take into account that it could be that maybe if the game was better optimized for the Series X, maybe this is something that could have happened. But if you have to ask, well, why didn't that extra optimization time go into it? Maybe it's because they had to worry about getting this game running properly on the Series S. You have to understand that these developers, and Digital Foundry did mention this in their comparison, they're just worried about getting their game out the door, right? And they're not going to sit there and be like, well, maybe we should make it so that we can optimize this game to run at 4K 60, with ray tracing enabled on the Series X. They're not going to worry about that when they have to worry about making sure that they can get this game running properly on the Series S and also on the PS5. It's just not going to happen. So, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to have a discussion about this. I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with doing a comparison like this. I don't think that there's anything wrong with being interested in a comparison like this. I think that we do need to understand that it's just, it's basically just benchmarking the GPU, the graphical capability. And that's something that the Series X is supposed to do better than the PS5. But when we talk about a game being fully optimized for a given console and having to utilize every single component and get all those components to work in conjunction with one another to produce the results that matter most, which is the results you're going to see when playing the game, that's not what this is. This is a photo mode comparison. Okay, that's what this is. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if the Xbox Series X really is going to start flexing on the PS5 in any significant way, I don't think this is the way to do it. If we saw a scenario where a multi-platform game comes out and there's like a significant, undeniable advantage in terms of frame rate, right, where it's like it runs at like a locked 60 at 4K on this console, but drops down to like a low 40s consistently on the PS5, then I'd be like, wow, okay, I guess we're starting to see that power advantage, happen. We've seen some situations and scenarios where the Series X has like a higher resolution. I think the Division 2 is the latest game where it does offer a higher resolution at 60 FPS. And that to me is not surprising, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh man, oh no, this is unacceptable. Like no, that's kind of how it should be, right? This is supposed to be the more powerful hardware. It's supposed to have a significantly more powerful GPU. So you would expect to see some results there, right? Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about this because I did find it interesting, and honestly, I just find it kind of laughable. I mean, I understand again why Xbox fans would want to run with this, but I really do think that if the Series X is going to prove itself as that powerhouse console where there's going to be a significant performance delta, I just don't think showing it off in a photo mode is really the ideal way to go about doing that. And if you want to blame the developers and say that, oh, it's Sony's fault, they told Remedy not to do it, or Remedy just didn't want to do it, I mean, you have to understand the PlayStation brand is a very, very popular brand, much more popular than Xbox worldwide. So if a developer, is worried about their game selling well on any given platform, does that mean that they're going to spend less time optimizing for the Xbox console? I don't know. It's a possibility, especially when you factor in the Series S. Anyway, leave your thoughts about this down in the comments below. I will be very interested to see what you have to say. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or you appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.